Hello, friends, and welcome back to Lesson 6, Part 2, Abraham Lincoln. Today, we will hear about Abraham Lincoln, who was President of our country during the important time in American history known as the United States Civil War. Abraham Lincoln often wore a very tall hat, and I want you to listen carefully to find out about what President Lincoln had in his hat and why it was so important. If I asked you what you kept under your hat, you might laugh and say, "My head! What else would I keep under my hat?" The word head means a part of your body that contains your brain and your face. President Abraham Lincoln kept his head under his hat too. You may have seen pictures of a tall bearded man wearing his tall black hat, but sometimes Mr. Lincoln kept something more under his there too. Here is the story of what lay beneath Abraham Lincoln's hat. Make a prediction right now. What do you think is under his hat? Abraham Lincoln was a busy man, surrounded by many other busy men who helped him make important decisions. They grew impatient when they had to wait to meet with the president. So on this particular day, as they waited to see their chief, President Abraham Lincoln, they were not in a good mood. Remember, we've heard the word chief before. Does anyone remember what it means? Absolutely, the person in charge. They became even angrier when they entered President Lincoln's office and found him in his rocking chair, his long legs stretched out before him, holding a book and laughing out loud. Each man thought, "We are in the middle of a war. Does the president think we have nothing better to do than listen to him laugh? We don't like war. We do not like that we're sending people off to fight. We worry all the time about whether we're doing our best jobs that we can, yet he does not even look worried, even though he's in charge of the whole war." The war that they were in is the U.S. Civil War between the northern states and southern states. Lincoln and his men fought for the northern states that were against slavery. Lincoln asked his men to sit down. He said, "Welcome, gentlemen. Before we get down to business, listen to the joke." The men listened as the president read a joke out loud. Then he laughed again, but no one else laughed. One man said, "Mr. President, did you ask us here in order to read us a joke? That is a waste of our time." Lincoln set his book down. His face became serious. Serious means not smiling or happy. "That is not why I called you here," he said. "But running a war, knowing that people will get hurt or killed, is sad business. When I can laugh, I do, for if I do not laugh, I might cry, and I thought you all might need a laugh too." He stood up, all 6 feet 4 inches of him. That was a lot taller than most men in his time. Walking to the desk, he picked up a tall black hat and reached inside. Pulling out a folded piece of paper, he said, "I've been carrying this paper inside my hatband for more than 3 months, waiting for the right day to show it to you. Today is that day. I have word that our army has won a great battle. Perhaps we are beginning to win this terrible war at last. Now I feel safe in telling people what I want to do next." When George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and the others started the United States 100 years earlier, they tried to make a country in which people could be free to do as they wish and travel where they chose to go. They did many wonderful things for our country, but they failed to do one important thing. They did not end slavery in America. Remember that slavery is a situation in which people called enslaved people are forced to work for somebody else without pay and without having the freedom to live their lives the way they want. An enslaved person was the worst thing a person can be. An enslaved person had to do whatever they were told. The enslaved person did not get paid for the work, but only received very plain food to eat, clothes to wear, often old clothes, and a place to sleep. The enslaved person could not choose to leave or decide how to live his or her lives. Some of the people who started the United States said, "Slavery is a terrible thing. We must not allow it in our new country. We believe in freedom. How could we have enslaved people here?" But other people answered, "Slavery is fine. The rest of us will be free to decide things for ourselves, but enslaved people will not. If you say that there will be no slavery, we will not be able to help start the new country." George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and their friends knew slavery was wrong, but they thought, "We need enslaved people to help us run the country. Afterward, we can end slavery." So people thought that they needed the enslaved people to do the work for them, especially for the farmers in the South. But after America was born, year after year after year, many people still held on to slavery. The year before Thomas Jefferson died, he called slavery a tornado that will burst onto us sooner or later. He feared that there would be a war between those who wanted to end slavery and those who supported it. Abraham Lincoln was born in Kentucky the year Jefferson finished being president. Lincoln was born to a poor family living in a forest in a tiny cabin made of logs. His parents did not know how to read or write. Lincoln had to work hard to help them, and since he was a fair and honest person, he grew up believing everyone who worked hard should be paid fairly and treated fairly. Later, as a young lawyer, he gained a reputation of being the most honest lawyer in Illinois and was known by the nickname Honest Abe. Your reputation is how people think of you. Have you ever heard anybody else that had an honest reputation? Nice remembering. George Washington. Lincoln hated slavery. However, he also hated war, and when he became president, he tried to prevent the war from starting. But too many people on both sides were angry about many different issues, including slavery. In the South, there were large areas of land to farm, and that is the area where there were the most enslaved people. Because of this, the nation was divided. The North, colored in blue on this map, against the South, colored in gray on this map. People in most of the southern states decided, we'll start our own country that allows slavery. The North, with Lincoln as president, refused to let the South doing that, saying, we should be one country and we should not allow slavery. The war Thomas Jefferson had warned about began, and this was the U.S. Civil War. On the day that President Lincoln invited these men from the government to his office, he told them, I'm going to announce that enslaved people in the southern states will now be free according to law. I wrote that law on the paper I've been carrying in my hat. I call the law the Emancipation Proclamation. I'll proclaim, or let everyone know, that the enslaved people are emancipated, or set free. Anyone who does not let them go is breaking the law. President Lincoln went on, everyone must understand that America is truly a land of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, just as Thomas Jefferson wrote. The other men replied, Mr. President, we will gladly listen to your jokes if this is what happens afterward. But even after President Lincoln told everyone about the new law, many people who supported slavery would not give it up. It took nearly 3 more years of war before the Army of the South surrendered to Lincoln's Northern Army. The war ended, and now slavery was over, and the important paper that had helped make it happen was what Abraham Lincoln had been carrying under his hat. So that's our read aloud today, but I have a question. Do you remember what Abraham Lincoln's nickname was? Perfect, Honest Abe. What about, how did he get that nickname? You're right, he was honest. So I would like you to draw a picture to show why President Lincoln's hat was so important to him. Until our next read aloud.